guys, what's back to the video? In this video, I'm going to be ranking all of the 2022 comic book movies. Now, this video will be the first of many ranking videos to wrap up the year. As we're getting into the last few weeks of 2022, I'm going to be doing a bunch of other ranking videos like my top 10 favorite movies of the year, my 10 least favorite, my TV shows that I watched this year ranked, along with many other rankings. So if you're new around here and you don't want to miss any of those videos, make sure to subscribe and notification on so you don't miss any time I upload a new video or go live. Both are wasting more time. Let's get right into it. So starting off the list, in 7th place for me is Thor: Love and Thunder. The part that sucked most about this movie is I went in expecting so much more. You have Taika Waititi, who did Thor Ragnarok, who's responsible for this complete transformation of Thor in the MCU, and it was a transformation for the better. Obviously, this movie doesn't really go in that direction. I'll talk about that in just a second, but it also has award-winning Christian Bale coming into the MCU, and he's treated like an absolute goofball. This story had so much potential. As an MCU fan, there was so much riding for me here. I love how they've transitioned into the God territory, and I just love how all of that is expressed thus far in the MCU, the little that we've had of it. In this movie, I was ready to dive into it. I was really ready to get into the nitty-gritty. I was ready to see Gore butcher some gods. And he killed like one god in this movie, and barely even at that. And even then, the opening of this movie was great. We saw Gore, we saw the motivations, we saw the driving factor, we saw him ready to become one of the greatest MCU villains. And as time goes on, this movie just becomes more and more of an even unfinalized SNL skit, something that wouldn't even be aired on television. This is such a poorly written movie, and it doesn't even stop at the writing. The movie is just crafted in such a flimsy and poor way. It doesn't seem like Marvel cared about this movie at all, and it really sucks to see after Thor's had an immense transformation for the better from Thor Ragnarok to Infinity War and Endgame. And after Endgame, you have such an interesting plot point to go off of where he feels like he's failed the world, and then he helps save it. And then you go into Love and Thunder, where you reintroduce Natalie Portman as Jane Foster. You have Valkyrie, all these other storylines that you think could be great, but they all just play it for jokes. And I don't think Taika Waititi should come back for Thor 4. I don't even know if they need to have all of these other characters. In my opinion, Thor 4, you go back to the roots of Thor. You go back to Thor 1 and 2. You can keep it lighthearted, but give me that Norse god mythological feel. Get me away from what Thor Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder did in terms of humor and take it back to where this character really needs to go. But moving on, in 6th place for me is Morbius. Now, a lot of people are going to be confused as to why Morbius is above Love and Thunder, and I mentioned it right when I started talking about Thor Love and Thunder. I had a lot of expectations going into Thor Love and Thunder. Is that my fault? Yes, it is 100% my fault. But at least going into Morbius, I knew what the Venom movies were like. I knew what Sony was really capable of. And so I went in and I was actually kind of surprised. I really had a fun time with this movie. I really enjoyed a lot of the action. I mean, I don't think it's a great movie by any means. It's barely a good movie, even if it is a little bit. It's just, it's an entertaining watch. Even though it's so short, it feels like it runs just a little bit too long with the middle act of this movie. And the final act definitely ends a little abruptly. There's definitely a lot of cliches to just set up part 2 of this movie. But whatever the case may be, in comparison to Thor Love and Thunder, at least I enjoyed this movie. At least I had a fun time in this movie. And at least Jared Leto was entertaining. Whether I was making fun of him while watching the movie or not, at least this movie was so bad, I could actually make fun of it, and that's how I had a good time with it. But moving up on the list, in 5th place for me is DC League of Super Pets. Now, yes, this is a kid's movie. It does remind me of those corny Illumination movies, but whatever it may remind you of that is very childish, this movie still has a good amount of heart to it, to where you can still enjoy it. I definitely, again, think there's those cliches, but it really explores this DC world that sadly we haven't really gotten to see within the DC cinematic universes. And it's not even like this movie does anything generational. It's not like it does something phenomenal, but it's just a kid's movie that's fun. It uses DC lore to the best of its ability. It does a great job setting up this story with these pets. And it does, at the end of the day, it does a great job with just having fun. I do want to mention though, the second act of this movie, it definitely gets to those kid movie cliches. They're definitely just doing missions and stuff like that. But that's besides the point. I think for what this movie is, I think it's an entertaining watch. But moving on, in fourth place for me is Black Adam. I genuinely was entertained by this movie, and I feel like a lot of people just didn't like it because they thought it was stupid. It was one note. It was just action, action, action. But honestly, it's kind of everything I like. Like, I wouldn't tell you I was bored for a single millisecond in this movie. Like, my eyes were always glued to the screen. Even when I was going in for a second watch, I didn't want to get up to go refill my icy or my popcorn or go to the restroom. Like, I was 100% glued to the screen even a second time. And I think it's just because that's what I like. I love big, dumb action. That's just me. And no one can stop me from liking what I like. And I totally understand if that's not your jam. If you prefer something slower paced, something a little more personal, that actually makes you think a little bit, this might not be the movie for you. And the thing is, it's not like you can't like both. Like me personally, I love this big, dumb, fun explosion action like Black Adam, but I also like slower burn, more personal, political stories, even like Andor, even like another movie that came out this year, Banshees of the Inisherin, a very personal story. I think it just depends what you like, whether you like both or not, what you're really a fan of. But at the end of the day, Black Adam, I just can't call it bad because it had me glued to the screen for like 99.8% of the runtime. Now to third place though, third and up are genuinely just amazing movies. Like the gap between 4 and 3 is just insane. But in third place for me is Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now I know this might be a hot take. A lot of people will have this at their number 2 or number 1 spot. But my biggest thing for Black Panther Wakanda Forever is that I really don't see the rewatch value in this movie, and for me, that is a big deal. This movie clocks in at over 2.5 hours, if I'm not mistaken, but the movie itself is great. I mean, I think there are a few pacing issues going into the third act, but other than that, this movie does the impossible. It deals with the tragic loss. It had one hell of a production, and it just captivates you into this story. It brings you back to Wakanda. It introduces you to this new and beautiful and so well fleshed out world. It gives you amazing villains like Namor and Atuma, but also just amazing other side characters like Ironheart. I think there's a great balance in this movie of fleshing out Wakanda, fleshing out other side characters, but also fleshing out Shuri. Letitia Wright gives one of my favorite performances of the year in this movie as well. And at the end of the day, I think Black Panther Wakanda Forever is just a testament to how great Marvel can be. I mean, you have Love and Thunder at the very bottom of this list, and then this, as well as above this, there is another Marvel movie. So it's like, at the very maximum of Marvel's threshold, they can do a lot. At least they can do a lot of what I enjoy. And Black Panther Wakanda Forever is 100% a testament to that. I think what Wakanda Forever does so great, even in comparison to movies like above this, is I think it really lures you into the world. I think the number 1 movie does that as well. It really lures you into this world, and it makes the world a character. And I think that's why we're so invested. Wakanda is a character. So when they get invaded by Namor and his army, you feel like you lose a part of yourself. You feel that same emotional connection that you would feel when you lose a character, when a character would die. And just the way that they handle all of Wakanda's downfall and just the deaths in this movie, Queen Ramonda's death, I think there is just so much riding on this movie on an emotional level. And the fact that they actually like pulled away with it, the fact that they actually like got through this entire movie and delivered what they delivered, this movie is just, honestly, it is an achievement. Now, getting to my second favorite comic book movie of 2022, for me, it is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I know a lot of people don't like this movie, but me personally, it's everything I could ask for. I think the biggest flaw in this movie is definitely the fact that it's not as madness as we wanted. I think they definitely have a lot of missed potential here. It definitely felt like more of a pushing forward stone for just the multiverse stuff. And I think it works though, at least for me personally. I like the streamlined story. I mean, I made a handful of videos on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and I think it does a great job of just giving us like a streamlined story of Doctor Strange and Wanda. They both have these similar problems that they're going through in their mind, that they can't be in control of everything. I mean, Christine says to Doctor Strange at the very beginning of the movie that he can't be the hand guiding the knife the entire time.
You have to be the one holding the knife. And I always respected you for it, but I couldn't love you for it.
And obviously, Wanda will go and kill anyone she needs to get her children and live a happy life. And so these themes in the movie, honestly, they do resonate with me, but also I feel like it's a very cool theme, a very personal theme to have in a movie exploring the multiverse. And like I said before, the multiverse isn't as mad as we would like. I mean, I don't think they went as crazy as they could. The opposite lights, the weird pizza, like, I don't think that was really enough to justify calling it Multiverse of Madness. On top of all of this, Sam Raimi. I think that conveys my point enough. This is the most Sam Raimi you can get. I mean, it's not even like Spider-Man 2 Sam Raimi, it's like Evil Dead Sam Raimi. It's not even like the classic superhero Sam Raimi. He just brings something completely different to this movie. And I definitely feel like you can tell that he didn't write it. You can tell these creative differences. You can tell where the concrete little splits a little bit here, where there's a little bit cracks in the foundation of this movie. But I think that's just butting heads of the creatives behind this movie. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I think we had such a good streamlined story that is short, that is small, it is very simple, but Sam Raimi can also insert his themes, his ideals, and also just his absolutely insane mind that I absolutely love into this movie. And on top of all of this, Doctor Strange is also my favorite character in the entire MCU. Wanda is one of my favorite characters in the entire MCU. And on top of that, we got to see a zombie Doctor Strange fly around using a cape of demons. Like, I don't know what more you could ask for. But with that being said, in first place for me, my favorite comic book movie of 2022 is The Batman. This movie was my most anticipated movie of all time, and it somehow surpassed all of the hype I had for it. I made over like 75 YouTube videos on this one movie before it had even come out, and it somehow just still blew me away. I've seen this movie 9 times. I saw it 6 times in theaters, 3 times at home on 4K Blu-ray. This movie is spectacular. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I really admire the passion and the craft behind this movie, first of all, but I just think like this final product, maybe I just needed something fresh since like Infinity War. Maybe I needed something that felt so stylistic, so different, so real in a comic book movie, and this just gave it all to me on a silver platter. Robert Pattinson as Batman, in my opinion, one of, if not the best comic book movie role casting of all time. I think he is up there with RDJ as Iron Man, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Chris Evans as Captain America. He is up there in terms of all-time superhero castings. He is phenomenal. Then you have Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Colin Farrell as Penguin, Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, Paul Dano as the Riddler, and best of all, Matt Reeves as the director. You can feel how much Matt Reeves loves this movie. And maybe it's because I was so obsessed with the behind the scenes of this movie. I was so excited for every little detail that we got. But I just feel like this movie was crafted for people who, and I think is, I don't even love Batman like that. As someone who enjoys comic book movies over anything, but also enjoys these deeply personal and emotional stories, like I mentioned before when we were talking about Black Adam, I love both ends of the spectrum a lot. But when you can perfectly mix those two, I think that's where you get like that peak movie for me. And The Batman is just that. I mean, I also mentioned comparing Wakanda as a character itself. Gotham is just like that. Matt Reeves has created this dirty and grungy Gotham that makes it feel like its own character. When Gotham is getting flooded, you feel this pain and this loss. Batman delivers something that I would never expect from this comic book movie genre, and I'm so excited for the future of this franchise, and I'm happy it's going to be a franchise, because it's something like having a Batman-centered universe. Like, look at the MCU. Like, you have a plethora of characters and heroes, right? So you have to split up the character development, but when you're focusing around just one character, this one figure of Batman, and he's the leading factor throughout all of these projects, the central focus of actually like these villains are being built up to Robert Pattinson's Batman. These spin-offs are directly to impact Pattinson's Batman movies. Like, this movie in this franchise is formulated for success, at least at this point in time. Now, with the other changes to the DCU, I don't know what's going to happen. But I really just, I love this character that's been crafted. And at the end of the day, it's just such a well-crafted film. I mean, not only the direction stuff, but you have cinematographer Greg Fraser, who is I would arguably say the best working cinematographer right now. You also have Michael Giacchino, arguably the best composer right now. You have so many great elements that come together to just make, at least in my opinion, a near perfect movie. But guys, that's my ranking of all 7 2022 comic book movies. Let me know your ranking for all 7 of these movies in the comments down below. And again, these next few weeks will be filled with other 2022 end of the year rankings, so subscribe so you don't miss any of them. But that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.